In the story of the true and false $1,000, I returned to the mansion as the real millennium. I didn't realize it became the beginning of my nightmare. Lucas, my fiancé, who had been betrothed since childhood, was full of loathing for me. My blood family couldn't wait for me to disappear from this world. Sophia fell down the stairs. Her fiancé, Lucas, thought I pushed him in retaliation. He pushed me straight down. Sophia got angry and ran away. Her brother, Ethan, thought I was the instigator, threw me on the highway in the pouring rain. Even my mom sadly confronted me. Emily, why didn't you stay in that village? Why did you come back after I became the heir? They all regretted it. A month ago, my foster mother died of a cerebral hemorrhage at the funeral. A man in a suit appeared. He took me in his arms heartily. He said, "Emily, I'm your father. Come back to Smith's with me." The police told me I was the long-lost daughter of wealthy Chicago businessman John Smith. News of the Smiths' real daughter's homecoming spread quickly through Chicago. But in reality, my life was worse than the family's pet dog. The day I came home, John Smith warmly introduced me. No one in the living room reacted much, except for Sophia. Sophia was an exception. I'd seen her on Hot Topic before. She's the Smith family's adopted daughter. Whether it's her birthday every year or the news of her engagement to Lucas, all of them put her on the hot search often. When she heard my identity, she immediately ran away crying, "Sophia, Sophia, daughter." The three of them chased out together. Linda stopped in her tracks, angrily turned her head to me and said, "I have only one daughter, Sophia. You can never expect me to recognize you." John Smith said Linda was just having a hard time accepting the news for the time being. But I am their real daughter after all. Not long after that, he left the country for work. From that day on, Linda had my luggage thrown up in the attic. "This is what your long-dead mother left behind." As soon as I entered the door, I found the luggage all thrown on the floor. Ever since I moved in, Sophia treats me like an enemy, constantly looking for trouble. I've never thought of robbing other people's things. I just want what's mine. She was clutching an old silver chain. There was contempt in her eyes. That's the only thing my mom left me. My heart tightened when I saw it. I rushed over to take it back. "Don't come any closer, or I'll rip it off." Sophia took a step back with the necklace, seeing how nervous I am. She seems to have found something funny. I take a deep breath, coldly say, "Give it back." "I won't," she said, while pulling off the necklace, threw it in front of me. Gnashing her teeth, she said, "Emily, you don't want to take my place. I am the daughter of the Smith family, Lucas's fiancée." I looked down at the broken necklace on the ground. My body was trembling. The wrinkled woman who loved me came back to me. She was poor, so poor that she couldn't even afford to buy a dress. She always bought me nice clothes, let me eat things she couldn't even afford to eat herself, and sent me to college. Sophia was still provocative. She came up to me, said viciously, "If you're smart, go back to your poor place or not." She hadn't finished. I suddenly grabbed her by the neck, slowly and forcefully. Sophia's face instantly turns red. She struggled and shouted, "Emily, kill me if you dare." "You think I don't dare," I said as I pushed him hard. Sophia fell to the ground. She was gasping for air. I looked down to pick up the necklace. She suddenly pounced on me like crazy. I quickly dodged away. She screams. Without warning, she fell down the stairs. At that moment, Lucas downstairs heard the commotion, rushed over as soon as Sophia saw him, cried out, full of a grieved face, said, "I just want to talk to her, get along well in the future." As a result, she directly pushed me downstairs. Lucas heard, immediately looked at me with wide eyes. "Emily, you really come from a rough place," apologized to Sophia. I didn't even want to look at him. I pick up the necklace and leave. He suddenly stands up, grabbed my hand, trying to push me downstairs. I quickly grabbed the fence, stopped him from doing so. Lucas' face got worse and worse when he saw it, finally attacked me verbally, said it was lucky it was Sophia she was engaged to. Someone as vulgar as me doesn't deserve to be his fiancée. A girl from the country is different. I'm ashamed of the Smiths for having a daughter like you. Hearing that, I stopped walking. I let out a sneer. "Mind your own business. Since you like her so much, just hurry up and marry her. Right now, she's still the Smith family's adopted daughter. Maybe one day she won't belong to the Smith family. Will the Smiths still let her in?" When I took the necklace to be repaired, the master joked. The cost of the repairs would be enough to buy several new ones. I didn't say anything, staring at the broken necklace. My heart was in pain. In other people's eyes is not worth something, but it was my most precious treasure. My mom's belongings are few and far between. The necklace is one of them. I'm one of her legacies. I got back to Smith's house after dark, as soon as I entered the door. It felt like the atmosphere in the living room was particularly off. John Smith had returned at some point, as soon as he saw me. The original face immediately revealed a smile. He stood up and took my hand. Let me sit next to him, opposite the sofa. Sophia was lying in Linda's arms, crying very hard. She has a bandage on her knee, bruises on her face too. Linda looks at me coldly. Ask, Sophia said. You pushed her down the stairs, Emily. We Smith family members have always been kind-hearted. How could there be such an evil person like you? She scolded me. I'm not angry at all, ever since I came back to this house. I know how much Linda hates me. She even hates me, even though I'm her own. Actually, before meeting her, I would love to recognize her. John Smith heard this, hurriedly rounded up said, Emily is after all our own daughter. How can you talk like this? John Smith, Sophia was raised by you. She was hurt so badly. How dare you speak for the person who harmed her? Seeing that the two are about to quarrel, Sophia cried and pulled the corner of Linda's clothes, pitifully looked at John Smith and said, Dad, don't fight for me. I shouldn't have been in this house, but I don't want to leave you. Linda listened. It was hard for her heart. She patted Sophia's back, voice choked, and said, Don't worry. Mom will definitely help you get justice. She looked at me angrily and said, Emily, if you don't apologize to Sophia today, you won't be able to stay in this house anymore. I looked across the street at the richly dressed woman. Linda and I look so much alike. Anyone who looks at us would think we are mother and daughter. But her attitude towards me, but it was worse than treating an enemy. I'm still a little sad in my heart. Take a deep breath, pretending to be fine. I smiled and said to Linda, Every corner of the house is equipped with surveillance. As long as you are willing to take a look, you will be able to understand the truth. Said, I took another deep breath, stand up slowly, look to John Smith, Dad, I know people don't like me much, so I want you to buy me a house. I'll move out. Come back for a month. It was the first time he'd ever heard me call him that. John Smith's eyes reddened. He held my hand tightly, excitedly said, Good daughter, Daddy won't let you go out and suffer anymore. Today I came. I'm here today to talk about this. He turned his head to look at Sophia. He sighed. Sophia, you are also the daughter of the Smith family, but the conflict between you and Emily is too big. I bought you a house. He took out a card and put it in front of Sophia. Put it in front of Sophia, said, There are $5 million in the card. You can move out tomorrow. John Smith finished, turned his head to look at me. His eyes are full of pain. Emily, report to the office tomorrow. The Smith family's child. In the future, they will definitely take over the family business. I looked at the man with gray hair in front of me. For the first time, I experienced the warmth of a father's love. This father's love is very concrete. Sophia looked down at the card, crying tears. Finally, she smiled with relief, slowly let go of Linda's hand and stood up. With red eyes, she said, Mom, it seems that my daughter can't provide for your old age. From now on, you can pretend that I don't exist. Take good care of your sister, she finished, cried and ran out the door. Linda hurriedly chased after her, shouting, Sophia. Sophia just reached the door. She was blocked by someone. Sophia, where are you going? Ethan nervously took her hand. Sophia, what's wrong with you? Tell me. I will help you to get justice. Sophia cried so hard that she couldn't breathe. She looked up at me, but didn't say anything. Ethan immediately understood what she meant. He turned his head, stared hard at me, shouting, Emily, what did you do to her again? Do you know what you've been doing to her? Since you came back, Sophia has suffered a lot. People want to laugh when they're angry. I didn't do anything. Why did I let Sophia suffer so much? I took a deep breath, coldly looking at this man who is connected to my blood. I don't. I said, I never showed any hostility towards her. She was the one who put on the act, trying to take what was rightfully mine. If that were true, I wouldn't have cared to put her through a little aggravation. John Smith came up next to me. He said seriously to Ethan, Ethan, Emily is your own sister. You need to wake up. He looked at Ethan a little upset. No one is trying to get rid of Sophia. I'm just trying to get her to move out because they're too close. I'm just trying to get her to move out. Even if she doesn't live in the Smith house, she's still a Smith child. Seeing her father so firm, Sophia cried even harder. She shook off Ethan's hand. Brother, don't you fall out with Dad for me. I wasn't a Smith family member in the first place. Now that my sister is back, it's time for me to go too, she said, pushed Ethan's hand away, cried and ran out, disappearing in the rainy night. Ethan took one look and got anxious. hurriedly walked to me while I did not react. Grabbed my hand, pulled me out the door. He threw me into the back seat of the car, shut the door vigorously. He got into the driver's seat. "Ethan, what are you trying to do?" John Smith was outside, yelling at the top of his lungs, but Ethan acted as if he hadn't heard a thing. He drove the car out of Smith's old house with a kick of the gas pedal. On the highway, it rained even harder. The signs on the side of the road quickly swept past the car windows. It was then that I realized Ethan's intentions. He was sending me back to that remote hamlet. "You hate me that much." I sat in the back seat of the car, asked him coldly. Ethan listened, lets out a cold laugh, swept me in the rearview mirror. "You shouldn't have come back if it wasn't for you. Sophia could have lived happily ever after." Hearing this, I couldn't help but laugh. "What are you laughing at?" Ethan asked suspiciously. I leaned back in my seat with my arms wrapped around my chest, eyes cast to the window, speaking in a calm tone. "Sophia doesn't want me to come back, is worried about losing what she already has. Lucas doesn't want me to come back because he likes Sophia, don't want her to suffer. You're having an illicit relationship with your adopted sister. You're afraid I'll expose you. You'll be humiliated." I turned my gaze to Ethan. I asked, "Am I right, brother?" There was a bared sound. The car jerked to a stop in the emergency lane. Ethan frowned, turns his head to look at me, a hint of panic in his eyes. "How did you know?" I smiled. Didn't say a word. Immediately after, Ethan quickly got out of the car, walked over to me, opened the car door, pulled me down, dropped me on the ground. His eyes are as cold as ice, looking down on me. "Emily, you'd better not say anything, or else. I can't guarantee what I'll do." Hearing those words, I kept my head down. I let the rain hit me hard. "You guys are so bold, still worried that I'll go around talking about it." I smiled slightly, looking up at him. "Ethan, I guarantee it. If you touch me, I'll make you lose everything you've got. I'll make you lose everything you've got." Ethan's eyes were filled with surprise and anger. He whispers a curse of madness. Then he drove off. It was raining hard. Not many cars on the highway at night. I looked at the road sign. The next exit was to Anhu Village. Luckily, the cell phone was still on me. The rain fell on the screen. I scratched it several times before I found the person's name in the address book. Just pressed the dial button. Less than 5 seconds. A gentle voice came from the other end of the line. "Emily." Listening to Daniel's voice, even in this environment, I felt much more at ease. I smiled. I asked, "Daniel, can you pick me up?" In less than 10 minutes, Daniel appeared in front of me with an umbrella. He was breathing heavily. He took me in his arms. He said, "Don't be afraid, I'm coming." I reached out in surprise, gently hugged him. He took me back to the home I've lived in for over 20 years. But this time, after opening the door, I could no longer see the kind old lady. Daniel took off his jacket and draped it over my shoulders. He hurriedly built a fire to keep me warm. I took his hand. I smiled and said, "Don't be busy, sit down." His whole body suddenly stiffened. The tips of his ears reddened slightly. Daniel and I grew up together. In this world, he was the best person to me besides Mom. The day Mom died, he specially came back from out of town. He promised me that he would take good care of me, never let me suffer. I still went back to Smith's. I didn't want to be stuck in this small place. I didn't have the chance before, so when the opportunity came, I clung to it. He sat next to me, peeking at me several times. "Anything you want to ask, just ask," I said. Daniel takes a deep breath, frowning. "Emily, you're not having a good time." I listened, raised an eyebrow. "So what? Does it really matter if you're happy or not?" I used to be happy, but when Mom got sick, I couldn't even come up with the money to save her life. I felt sorry for her from the day she left. I was determined to change things. Daniel didn't say another word. He understood better than anyone. "It's not marriage and children I'm after." Just after dawn, John Smith sent for me. Daniel stood in the doorway. He looked at me hesitantly. Finally, he whispered, "Emily, go do what you want. If you get hurt, come back. I'll always be there for you." I wanted to ask him to come with me, but we each have our own responsibilities. Daniel has wanted to contribute to his hometown since he was a child. Now he's working toward that goal. I look at him. I nodded my head and said, Daniel, I'll see you later. I'm sure we'll meet again. I'm sure we'll meet again." As soon as I walked into the Smith Group's conference room, Ethan's face immediately became complicated. He introduced me to everyone. "This is my daughter, Emily. You should have all seen the news. From today onwards, Emily officially becomes the assistant manager of Smith Group." John Smith respected my opinion. He didn't force me to change my last name. I just joined the company. He assigned me a position comparable to Ethan's status. I bowed to the people in the conference room, seriously. Hello, everyone. I'm Emily. As of today, I'm the assistant manager of Smith Group in front of everyone. I'm still a newbie. I don't know anything. Please teach me more in the future. I'll study hard. I won't let Dad down. John Smith listened to my words, nodded his head, showed a satisfied smile. After the meeting was over, only Ethan and I were left in the conference room. He sneered. He sneered and said, "You have good tactics." He slowly turned his gaze to me. He asked, "From the day you came home, you've been planning to compete with me for the family fortune, right?" I looked at him and replied, "You are older than me and smarter than me. Are you still afraid that I'll take anything away from you? You're a Smith kid. So am I. Why shouldn't I be able to compete?" Ethan raised his eyebrows indifferently. "Of course I'm not afraid. You're a woman who can make a lot of noise." "Well, we'll see." I stood up. I was about to walk out of the conference room. The door suddenly opened. Sophia came in hurriedly, seeing me here. She froze, surprised. "My dad really made you the assistant manager. What I asked him for so many years but didn't get. How come it's so easy to give it to you?" She suddenly shouted. Even Ethan was startled. Rushing to stand up to calm her down, I glanced at them coldly, didn't say anything, walked straight out of the conference room. As soon as the door closed, Sophia let out a loud cry, shouting, "Brother, I also want to enter the company. I can't let her take away what belongs to me." Since I joined the company, I moved out of Smith's house. John Smith had no choice. He bought me a big flat in the city center. I'm not afraid of anyone. I just joined the company. I needed a quiet environment to learn the ropes. Sophia got a job as a secretary through Ethan. On this day, I bumped into her in the pantry. She was bad-mouthing me to the others. I didn't go in right away. Instead, I turned on my cell phone to record. You may not realize how messy Emily's private life is. She's really different as a girl from the countryside. In order to date men, she moved out on purpose. Everyone in the company knows it well. This once favored fake millennial. So many people flatter her, and they say I'm not good enough. The day before yesterday, I went out with her to socialize. You wouldn't believe it. That girl lowered her voice. She said with a disgusted face. The partner was an old man in his 50s. Emily kept drinking with him, especially pleasing. After the socializing was over, she let me go first. The contract was signed the next day. Who knows if she went to see that old man? In an instant, everyone in the pantry laughed. She's really not picky. It's so overwhelming. Bang. I kicked open the pantry door with force, walked in with my cell phone while videoing. Seeing me come in, the girl who was just talking about me behind my back immediately changed her face, lowering their heads and not daring to look at me. I pressed the pause button on the video, laughed a little. It seems like they are chatting about my gossip here. I'll have to listen. Finish speaking. Two people looked at me, looked a little embarrassed. They slipped away. The girl looked like she was going to leave too. I reached out and stopped her. Just now is not quite able to say it. Continue. She was sweating profusely, hurriedly turned her head to look at Sophia. There was a plea for help in her eyes. Sophia immediately understood what she meant. She clasped her hands on her chest. She said contemptuously to me, "Emily, you have a ghost in your heart. For the sake of a project, you even accompanied an old man in his 50s. I can't stand it." She said some nasty things. I didn't look at all affected. I wasn't affected at all. I looked at the girl. I said, "You're fired." Her whole body froze, asked in disbelief, "Why? I'm your boss. You have no right to ask me why. If you have to give a reason, it's because you rumored about your boss. I've let you off the hook by not pursuing you legally. The video just now is the evidence." I didn't expect that girl to immediately redden her eyes, shouted, "I didn't rumor." Sophia next to her also rushed to help. "Right. Who are you to say that others are rumor-mongering? It's just that things have been exposed. That's why you're in a hurry. You want to fire people in a hurry, since you said no. Then show me the evidence." Look at them singing in unison, as if they wanted to eat me alive. I smiled indifferently. Who am I to prove it to you guys? Finished speaking, I walked forward, took off the girl's license plate. Say it? Are you resigning on your own? Or do you want me to continue to pursue your legal responsibility? Her face instantly turned pale, teeth clenched together. After a while, "Manager Emily, I was wrong. I shouldn't have spoken out of turn. I just graduated. It's hard to find this job. Please spare me this time. I beg you." She begged and pleaded. In the end, she couldn't help but cry. I threw the license plate in front of her, said, "You're an adult now. Have to be responsible for your own behavior. You go and do the exit formalities yourself. Remember that in the future. That's all. I look at Sophia. You don't think that you have Ethan's support. Don't think you can make trouble in the company with Ethan's support. Don't forget. Don't forget, my father is still the head of this family. There is something else in my words. Sophia's eyes reddened. She stared at me fiercely, but she didn't say a word for half a day. That night, Linda sent me back to Smith House. Emily, do you think that I can't be the master of this family at all? She stared at me coldly. Obviously, she wanted to make a case for Sophia. I'm not surprised by this kind of scene anymore. I look at her calmly. Sometimes I wonder, am I really the child you fought so hard to give birth to? Linda's expression froze for a moment. It's true that you like Sophia, but it's also true that I came back as the Smith's daughter. I took a deep breath. Said, growing up, I never learned that a crying baby gets the benefit of the doubt, so in front of you, I will not pout, nor will I bow down. You don't like me. I can stay out of your face, but it's not that I'm afraid of you. It's just that I don't feel anything for you either. Linda finished listening. A sad expression appeared on her face. She frowned, angrily says, I'm your mom. Do you know you are my mom? I interrupted Linda, for the first time a little angry. Then why can't you be fair? I don't want you to favor me like you did Sophia. I just want you to treat me fairly. I shouted. Linda listened, silence. I take a deep breath, stand up, said, I don't believe you don't know about Ethan and Sophia. You can be so forgiving with a relationship like theirs. Why can't you be more tolerant with your own daughter, even if it's just a little bit? I turned around and left. I was about to step out the door. Behind me came Linda's heartbreaking shouts. Emily, why don't you stay in that village? Why don't you stay in that village? My heart stung. My eyes are also very sore. I forced myself not to let the tears flow down. I said calmly, let you down. Mom, after leaving Smith's house, I drove straight to the bar. It was the first time I called Linda Mom, and the last time, drink after drink after drink. The exhaustion of the last few days was finally relieved. I looked down at the inexpensive drinks. A tear slipped from my eye. It's great to have money. 1 bottle of wine is enough for me and my mom to live for a month. If John Smith had found me earlier, wouldn't she have had to die? Thinking about this, I smiled bitterly and drank another glass of wine. My head was a little dizzy. I thought I had work tomorrow, so I planned to go back. I just walked out of the bar. I ran into Lucas. He was obviously surprised to see me here. Emily, what are you doing here? What's going on? The bar is owned by your family. Why can't I drink here? I just disliked it. Lucas's friend laughed. He said, isn't this your real fiancée? She's really good looking. Lucas heard that, disgruntledly glared at him, said, no matter how pretty she is, she's still a snake. Not half as kind as Sophia. I smiled, said, take it as a compliment. After saying this, I was ready to leave, just called for a chauffeur, but realized that the car keys were missing. I was in a hurry to go in and look for it. Lucas walked up to me, said arrogantly, the keys are missing. Do you want me to give it to you? But don't you think too much about it. I'm only doing it for John Smith's sake. I looked at his boyish face, couldn't help smiling, said, I'd better not force you then. I stopped a cab, left here. A month later, I've made significant progress in handling official business and securing projects. John Smith praised me. It's worthy of my daughter, born to be a good businessman. But he didn't know. I've been sleeping 4 hours a day for a month. I know my foundation is not as good as Ethan's. Fortunately, I didn't let John Smith down. I didn't let myself down either. But soon, there was a fatal problem. You said, what's going on? Ethan yelled, throwing the folder hard in my face. I was hit so hard my head snapped back, took a deep breath, then crouched down and picked up the papers. Emily, you must be well aware of the relationship between the Jia Sheng Group and our family. You were in charge of the project in the west of the city. You are the only one who has handled all the information. Now you tell me, why would the other company have our plans and quotation? Ethan glared in anger. But I can't argue now, because Ethan and I are the only ones who have seen the plan and the quotation. Even if something happened, I can't say Ethan leaked it without evidence. I picked up the documents and organized them. I looked up at him. I will find out about this matter. Ethan smiled after hearing that. How capable are you of finding out? Let me tell you, the company lost $50 million because of this. If you can't give me an explanation, you're going to the police station. John Smith has been comforting me since he found out about this. He said it's fine, but I could tell he was also a bit skeptical about whether this was related to me. I didn't explain right away. Instead, I checked the truth first. I asked Mr. Chen of Carson Group to meet with me several times, all to no avail. Finally, I summoned up the courage to inquire about his schedule. Finally found the opportunity a week later. Silver Tongue is an upscale members-only entertainment club in Chicago. I paid a lot of money to get admission. I followed Mr. Chen to the 3rd floor. When he was about to enter the private room, I was going to go up and stop him. Mr. Chen arrived. I didn't have time to show my face. I heard a familiar voice. It was Ethan. I hurriedly hid behind a nearby pillar. I quietly revealed half of my head. Mr. Chen laughed twice. He shook hands with Ethan briefly. Then they entered the box together. This scene makes my heart beat faster. Could it be that in order to drive me away, he was willing to work with his nemesis? The news was so shocking. I had a hard time accepting it, but I understand this is a rare opportunity. Wait for them to go in. After confirming that no one was around, only then did I quietly come out from behind the pillar. I wore a mask and a hat, quietly walked to the door of the box. I gently lay down on the door, wanted to hear the sound inside, but couldn't hear anything. At this time, a waiter pushed a cart over. It looked like he was going to deliver the food. I stopped him, took out $20,000 and gave it to him. He was a bit scared and asked, "Miss, what does this mean? Find a way to take a picture of the inside for me. The $20,000 will be yours." The waitress didn't say anything. She didn't refuse, obviously moved. I took out my cell phone directly, opened the bank transfer page, calmly said, "Report an account number, as long as you help me shoot. In addition to this $20,000, I'll transfer another $80,000 to you. I promise, I won't let anyone know it's you. Once this price is out." He couldn't hold back any longer. I was so anxious outside the door that I stomped my feet. After 10 minutes, the door finally opened. His hands were shaking badly. Sweating profusely, he handed me his cell phone. I got it. He just finished his sentence. He ran away as fast as he could. I was about to open my cell phone to check. The door of the box behind me opened again. Ethan's voice came, "Wait for me. I'll be right over." My heart skipped a beat. We were less than 2 meters away from each other. Luckily, my back was to him, but I still heard it clearly. His footsteps were approaching step by step. My heart was beating fast. Just took the first step. Ethan called out to me, "You wait a moment," he said while looking at my back suspiciously, slowly walking towards me. I hold onto my cell phone tightly, pressing the brim of my hat lower, just when I was too nervous to breathe. A fresh and nice scent suddenly drifted in. Then I was pulled into a warm embrace. "Baby, why are you here? Did you go to the wrong place?" Daniel's voice came from above. My whole body stiffened. He gently wrapped his arm around my waist, leading me forward, completely ignoring Ethan, getting in the car. My heart finally let go. I took a few deep breaths, turning my head to look at Daniel. The lights in the car were dim. His eyes were curved. He had a faint smile on his face. The dimples are especially obvious. "What are you doing here?" I asked him in surprise. Daniel just smiled. Reaching down, he removed the hat from my head. I was both anxious and curious, grabbed his wrist with one hand, pushing him to speak quickly. He mentioned that the project on the west side of Chicago was taken by someone else. The last time we talked, he said that project was particularly difficult to handle. "You didn't mention it again. I thought there might be a problem with the project, so I came here to take a look." When he finished speaking, I was even more surprised because of this. "So how did you get in?" Daniel nodded, says, It's because of this. I got in almost at the same time as you. I just said I was your boyfriend. They didn't stop me. I didn't know what to say, but I'm glad he showed up in time. Otherwise, it would be useless, even if we got a photo of Ethan and Mr. Chen together." Thinking about the photos, I hurriedly took out my cell phone to check them. After looking at the photos in the album, I finally breathed a sigh of relief. When I looked up, I found him still looking straight at me, eyes like a pool of clear water. My heartbeat suddenly accelerated. Hurrying to cough lightly, changed the topic and asked, "When are you going back? Do not go back." Daniel gently held my hand, said seriously, "Emily, I've been thinking about it for a long time. There'll be another chance to build a home. You're on your own now, even if I can't help much. It's good to be by your side. After all these years." I finally mustered up the courage to say this. He took a deep breath, as if he had made a great determination. Then he said, "Emily, I like you more than you think, so you will." He didn't even finish his sentence. I stood up, reached across the center console, wrapped my arms around Daniel's neck, pressed my lips to his. Daniel suddenly froze, but immediately after, he kissed deeper. I liked him a lot too, even more than he thought possible. When John Smith called me to come home, Daniel just happened to have the finished meal on the table. When he heard I was coming home, he immediately took off his apron. Emily, I'll stay with you. Emily, I'll stay with you since he came here. My life is full of happiness at this moment. I finally understood why my mom always said we should find someone to love. Because the days are long. It's hard. But with a lover by your side, the days are not so hard. I walked over and hugged him, resting comfortably against his chest. Close my eyes. No matter what happens, I can handle it. You be good and wait for me to come home for dinner. The living room of the Smith family's old mansion. It's quiet in a strange way. Ethan, Sophia, and Linda were sitting on one side. John Smith and I sat on the other side. We're obviously family. Now it's like we're divided into two camps. Dad, I'm in a meeting. Is there something urgent to say? Ethan asked casually. Recently, because of that project on the west side of the city, he's always been on top of me. He's been giving me a lot of looks. Even Sophia has sneered at me a few times. But I've always endured it. John Smith looked up at him, didn't say anything. He stood up, took a file out of the safe, put it in front of me, with love in his eyes. He said, Emily, sign this document. After you and your mom pass away, the Smith family estate will all belong to you. Once this sentence was said, I was not the only one who froze. Everyone else in the living room froze too. I sent him the picture of Ethan and Mr. Chen. Indeed, but I didn't expect John Smith to make this decision. At first, I just wanted to prove my innocence. Before I could say anything, Ethan and Sophia got anxious. Dad, don't you kid yourself. How can the Smith family fortune be inherited by a woman? Sophia also rushed to agree. That's right. Emily has only been back for 2 months, and you've given her all the money. What kind of drugs did she give you? They were all in a hurry, their faces red and their necks thick, as if they're going to come and tear me apart. Seeing this, Sophia immediately grabbed Linda's hand. She said with red eyes, Mom, if you don't take care of it, the Smith family will change their last name to Smith. But this time, Linda, who has always protected her, did not say a word. He shook off Sophia's hand, coldly said, the blood in her body is the blood of the Smith family. How can it be considered someone else's family? Sophia heard this. Her face became pale all of a sudden, looking straight at him. Not a single word could be said. After a short silence, Ethan stood up with a huff, shouted loudly, Dad, you can't be confused. I am your own son. It's been 5 years since I joined the company. Is it possible that my contribution in these 5 years? I'm still not as good as Emily's first month here. Shut up. John Smith, who had been silent all along, suddenly yelled, throwing 2 photos onto the table. Then you tell me, what is this? The moment he saw the photos, Ethan paralyzed helplessly on the sofa. In the photos, he was sitting shoulder to shoulder with Mr. Chen at the same dining table. Ethan whispered in a disoriented manner, impossible. How could you? If Emily hadn't found out you were conspiring with him, you could have sold the Smiths out. I'd still be in the dark. John Smith finished. He was so angry that he coughed again and again. Seeing this situation, Linda and I walked over together to help him pat his back. When our eyes met in the air, I suddenly felt that she might not hate me so much anymore. Ethan was totally flustered. He was red-eyed, choking back sobs. I'm just scared. Scared that Emily will take everything from me. Emily just came to the company. How could she take your position? And she works hard. She's willing to work hard. Sooner or later, she will surpass you. Sophia and I have helped you clean up a lot of messes over the years. Don't you know it in your heart? John Smith became more and more agitated. I hurriedly patted his back to comfort him. Dad, don't be angry. I'm sending you the photos. I didn't want you to do anything. I just wanted to prove my innocence. Emily, you don't have to play nice here, Sophia cried. You just can't stand to see me with Ethan. You're out of line. Sophia, be careful what you say and do. Accidents happen again. Linda said this coldly. She turned her head to look at Sophia. From today onwards. From today, you move out of the old house, Mom. Even you don't want me anymore. Sophia asked in tears. Linda frowned at her. You don't know what you and Ethan have been doing all these years. Do you still want to be shameless? You are my daughter. Even if it's not biological, I still treat you as my own daughter. What have you done? Have you forgotten? Speaking of which, Ethan and Sophia lost all their energy after a while. John Smith calmed down, handed me a pen and a document, smiled and said, Emily, sign it. My eyes got hot. I couldn't hold back the tears that I had been holding back for a long time. Dad, I was worried about letting you down, facing an unknown future. I felt unsure for the first time, just because the love he gave me was too deep and heavy. He smiled and took my hand, shook his head and said, "You haven't even taken a good look in the mirror this time. Since you entered the company, the whole person has lost a lot of weight. The dark circles under your eyes haven't disappeared. The old colleagues and people in the company who have worked together before, there's not a single person who doesn't praise you. Emily, Dad believes you can do well." I held his hand tightly. I let go of my defenses at that moment. A warm hand rested on my shoulder. Linda's eyes were filled with sadness. She tried to say something several times, but in the end, she just whispered, "Emily, I'm sorry. Ethan was transferred to a subsidiary. John Smith specifically told him not to come after me. Otherwise, he wouldn't even be able to stay in the subsidiary. Sophia didn't think she had a chance to inherit the family fortune. She took the money from John Smith and left. When she left, she kept looking at Linda. Her eyes were full of sadness, but there was no special care for her this time. I signed the papers. I became the sole heir to the huge family fortune. After leaving Smith's house, I realized that Daniel had called me a lot, sent a lot of messages. "Emily, are you okay? Do you want me to come over? I know you're stubborn. Once you make a decision, it's hard to be convinced, but I still want to tell you. It doesn't matter if it's all for nothing. I've saved some money over the years. It's enough for you to live a good life. Emily, I told you, I'll always be there for you. Come home early for dinner. I'll be waiting for you." My eyes are a bit moist, but my heart is warm. As soon as I entered the door, Daniel rushed over and hugged me tightly, as if he wanted to melt me into his body. "Emily, you're finally back," he said. I smiled weakly. I hugged him tightly too. After the ups and downs of life, both success and failure have become a thing of the past. Now, I feel very happy.